My name is Alan McKelvie Bigham, and I am a Fusilier in the 1st Battalion, Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers. My service number is 31311188. I was born on the 4th of February 1920 at 8 Duff Street, Girvan, to William and Margaret. My dad was a stonemason with Ayr County Council. We moved to Girvan around 1920 from Glasgow. My dad was born there and he always wanted to move back. I had 5 brothers and 3 sisters. I was the second youngest. The bigger ones were all born in Glasgow, and me and my wee brother were born here in Girvan. But he died at just 2.5, so I was always the baby. Not spoiled, but well looked after by everyone. I went to the borough school, and I was happy and content in life. Girvan was a great place to grow up. I enlisted before the war, and in 1938 we were in India, stationed in Wellington. We heard through the grapevine that war was imminent and had completed jungle warfare training just before the Japanese invaded Malaya in December of 1941. We were airlifted from India to Magwe, Burma, arriving on the 14th of March 1942 and joining the 13th Indian Brigade. We rode motor vehicles and moved south to Prome. We were deployed on the outskirts of Prome, defending the main road. We encountered heavy shelling and Japanese ambushes and lost a few men. We also had the Japanese air threat. They had been increasing air operations. Our convoys were being attacked by fighter aircraft. One killed our commanding officer on the 10th of April 1942. He was buried on the roadside next to a marker in the hopes that his body would later be recovered for burial. Our objective now was to destroy the oil wells at Yanang. The heat was unbearable, and we were all so tired, but we had to keep our wits about us every minute of every day if we wanted to stay alive. Our goal was achieved eventually. We were constantly circled and trapped by the enemy, but we would later receive battle honours for our actions. We then had to trek through over 500 miles of jungle to reach the Indian border. Less than a third of us would make it. This was the longest retreat in history by the British Army, and many were suffering from malaria and dysentery. On the 31st of May 1942, we left Imphal for Ranchi, where we could rest and recuperate, ready for next orders. We returned to Burma at the beginning of January 1943 with the 47th Indian Brigade to take part in the Arakan campaign. We hoped if this was successful, then we would significantly cut the Japanese supply lines. On the west coast there was a good road. Going along the ridge would be hazardous and not an option we would consider at the moment, as the Japanese had felled trees and set booby traps along the way, including concealed razor-sharp bamboo stakes. They were keeping their men on the ground ready to attack. We moved forward onto the Mungdao and intended to reach the naval and airbase at Akib Island, which was on the end of the Mayu Peninsula. The plans for a seaborne attack were abandoned because of insufficient naval forces and landing craft. A land attack was the only option. Patrols were sent out there, but there was no sign of the Japanese, so further patrols were sent onto the east side of the peninsula. Our first attack on Dunbake was on the 7th of January. The Japanese defensive bunkers could not be penetrated. 8 Valentine tanks were then brought in, and they too failed. After these 2 unsuccessful attacks, we were told to turn our attention to the eastern side of the peninsula. We were attempting to move south through swamps full of mosquitoes and searing heat. The terrain was just so difficult to manoeuvre through, and there was danger everywhere. We were watching every step we made. On the 10th of March, we were holding 5 local villages after moving through the Mayu Hills and jungle. 2 weeks later, the Japanese crossed the Mayu River and gained the hilltops. We became exposed and the Japanese managed to take over the villages. Less than a week later, we were given withdrawal orders. We were under constant attack. It was horrific, and we had to have our wits about us 24 hours a day. We took up defensive positions on Sino Pass, and on the 2nd of April we occupied an area of the conical hill But by the 4th of April, the Japanese had broken through again. Our lieutenant killed 5 Japanese men before he was fully bayoneted. He was so brave, trying to protect his men, but the enemy was brutal. We were surrounded, and some of the troops managed to escape back to the Sino Pass. On the 6th of April, we had withdrawn to the jungle-covered hills. We could walk, or more like stumble, less than half a mile an hour, and when darkness fell, we could see nothing. We moved forward by touch only. I'm glad I couldn't see. The sounds alone were terrifying. At first light, we took the chance to cross the river, but ran into a Japanese ambush. We were sitting ducks and mown down by the bullets. They were just firing in every direction, and there was smoke everywhere. Those who survived were taken as prisoners. I wasn't one of them. I died that day and my body was never recovered for burial. My death certificate will read, presumed died of wounds on or shortly after the 6th of April 1943. There was no mention of the horrors we endured, facing the most brutal of enemies. My name is mentioned on the Rangoon Memorial, Burma, along with nearly 27,000 others who were never found and whose bodies lie in this foreign land far away from home. I'm also named on Girvan War Memorial and on my parents' headstone in Girvan Doon Cemetery. My name is Alan McKelvie Bigham, and I will forever be 23 years old.